Our next speaker, our first speaker today, is Jan Hildebrand. As I said, Jan is from our partner company IZES. They look after the solar to hydrogen in Germany. The team themselves have been successful in developing their electrolyzer and moving that forward. They're one of the main hybrid pilots. Jan is the head of the Department of Environmental Psychology at IZES since 2016. Before his current role, Jan had been team leader of the Environmental Psychology Research Group at the University of Saarland. His research includes the acceptance of renewable energies and related energy infrastructure, conflicts and stakeholder perspectives in the energy sector, as well as public participation processes and their psychological demonstrations. Jan is coordinating the public acceptance of P2X technologies within the flagship project, Copernicus P2X. Jan, over to you, and the very best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for the nice introduction. And I think you already raised the right questions about stakeholder engagement and participation. And I think for sure it is a crucial factor for the energy transition as a whole, but also, of course, for the topic of hydrogen. But of course, beside all the, let's say, the potentials and the importance of participation and engagement, I think it is very important to be aware that it's not a guarantee to raise acceptance, but for acceptance, we really need all the different factors coming together, which means a good technological solution, an adequate planning, positive political regulatory framework, and so on. So we have to see all those different factors in a concert working together. The main potentials, I think, in good participation or in stakeholder engagement are that it increases especially the procedural justice perception, and it makes possible to use local or regional potentials in order to support the transition activities. Looking in participation mainly on the procedural level, we have the main criteria of transparency, of possibilities to get involved, to actively have an impact on the planning outcome and the planning result. And we distinguish between different levels of participation. Here you see the stages: information, consultation, and cooperation. I come to this later. And I think also as an introduction here, what I think it is important is not only the participation or engagement tools. So this is where many people tend to look at quite quickly. What shall I do? What is the tool I should use for engagement? But I think maybe even more important is the planning phase. So of participation and of engagement. And so I would like to share some thoughts looking from a social scientific point of view. What are the right questions you should raise and you should ask in advance while planning an engagement strategy? And why participation? I think Paul has already mentioned this. The transition we are facing currently is not only a transition which happens on a political level or on the level of big companies, but it's tackling all levels of society, and we need all levels of society in all the different sectors in order to bring successfully forward this energy transition. And this counts also for the transition looking at hydrogen. And I think that, of course, especially as this is the place or the level where many of the changes become visible and where plans and projects are realized. So municipalities and regions are in very important level, which we should focus on, and where we should empower the stakeholders there, the local and public authorities, the local governments, all those stakeholders who can bring forward and who have to this transition and who have to make decisions in which direction this transition shall go. And this empowerment has to be taken place also on different levels. So it's about competence, it's about personal and financial resources, it's about knowledge, and it's about giving them practical tools that they can use while doing those decisions. And this is what also GenCom is about, that we are developing or developing further tools for empowering communities to establish networks between different communities and municipalities, also in different countries, for knowledge exchange, for sharing experiences and best practices. So I think this is what it is. Also, engagement is about knowledge transfer and about learning. And I think we can learn a lot from the renewable energy sector so far, also on the topics of energy cooperatives, on civil energy, and how to integrate those perspectives also in the hydrogen sector. Talking about stakeholder engagement and hydrogen, I think it's also important to be aware that it's a very broad field and it's not a homogeneous group. So we have different sectors where hydrogen can be produced and also can be used. And likewise, or corresponding to this, also the stakeholder constellations differ a lot between those different sectors, and also corresponding to these different stakeholder networks, also the needs, the different perspectives, and also the goals are differing between those stakeholders. And so while thinking about involving them or thinking about stakeholder engagement, it is crucial to be aware of those different needs, perspectives, and goals. And so we should be aware that a stakeholder engagement procedure can be completely different when talking about, let's say, public transport in the mobility sector, or working with stakeholders in the industry in order to transform the steel production. And so Paul has already mentioned it, that we are very interested in your perspective and in your experiences. I come to my first question, what I would like to ask you. In which areas do you see the main need for stakeholder engagement and activation towards hydrogen transition? And I put here the main sectors: mobility, chemistry, and industry. I know that's quite a general difference, but still, I'm very interested to see what you think. Where are the main needs for stakeholder engagement? And when you're looking at the polls, you can see. Yeah, it's a competition here between mobility and all sectors, and I think this is I'm talking while you are still able to poll. I think this reflects a bit the public discourse we are observing so far, that hydrogen, in the public perception for at least, is connected mainly to the mobility sector. And of course, there in the discussion about direct electricity use on e-mobility, or is it hydrogen or is it synfuels? But so the industrial utilization and chemical or chemistry sector, also in the steel and glass, for example, so in the energy intensive industry, this is not that visible. But for sure, I think there are some potentials, and thank you very much. So I would end the poll now. We take the result for the documentation, and we keep this picture in our minds for the next slides and the next discussion. I said, or before now coming to the engagement, I want to give a short introduction while talking about engagement, which different levels can be differentiated. Normally, at least from the social science, we say that we have on the one hand political participation, which means the participation in the planning or decision-making procedures in the energy sector, for instance, in the planning and permitting process of an energy plant. We are aware that in the public perception, it goes along with some challenges of being too late, being not transparent enough. Many people simply have a lack of knowledge on procedures, which means when and how to participate. But there has been some research, or much research done on the last decade, and I think we're facing some improvements, and which is a bit, let's say, a younger topic, but still increasing in the meaning and in the public discussion, is about financial participation and sharing benefits and participation in value creation. But also here, it's not a trivial question or a simple giving money or not, but we see where we have different possibilities and approaches between individual or more collective, which means on the municipality level, for example, direct, indirect, or even in the time dimension, singular or continuous during project phases. So we see that there is, of course, between those different participation levels, there's a correlation between participation and also acceptance of the energy infrastructure, like renewables or others. But the concrete relation between those different stages and the different degree of an acceptance response, this has not been shown yet. Yeah, here just to reflect, I mentioned already those different stages, and when we're talking about participation, for me it's important to be clear of which level do we talk. So normally this is a famous letter of participation from Arnstein. It's like nearly 50 years old, and but I think it's still valid as giving a quick picture, information and consultation, which are the two lower stages. We would say on the participation side is not the real participation. So this is the base. This is the base for every procedure, informing the public and giving at least the chance to reach an informed decision or reach an informed consent. But the real participation starts at the third level, or at the cooperation side. So here people are getting active, and here people are being able to have an impact really on decisions, to make their own or co-decisions. And I think this is what we need for energy transition. So we need the upper stages, cooperation, and also active and self-responsible acting by the different stakeholders. So for me, it is important just to keep in mind, and when we're talking about engagement, it's not only about informing stakeholders or providing information about a project. This is the base, and this is for sure needed, but it's not sufficient. So what we need are opportunities really to get into action, to get in cooperations, and to activate a broad ranges of stakeholder groups to come to play an active role in energy transition. I already mentioned that from my experience, it's even at least as important, or maybe even more important, to spend an effort on the reflection and the planning of engagement. So this is what we observe in the practice. It's often not done sufficiently, and some engagement procedures were taken into action, and they were misleading because they were just focusing on the instrument, but not on the starting point. So I think it's always important to reflect what is really the topic of the engagement process, and in this connection also, what is the goal of the planned participation or of the planned engagement. Is it about achieving or creating acceptance? Then is the question again, from whom, from which stakeholder group, what is the target group? Do we want citizens to be activated in one project or in further procedures? Is it about raising financial potentials for an investment, for instance? Is it about conflict reduction? Or is it just to be, let's say, to be transparent, to gain legitimacy for a certain project? So these are different goals. Of course, they can go together, but it's crucial to be aware that different goals or different topics in an engagement require different methods and different instruments. And sometimes we are working or co-working with municipalities, and they say, well, we are planning an energy plant and we want to do a population survey in our community. And we say, yes, and in principle, that's a good idea, but what do you do with the results? How much you feel binded to the results, or you feel bound to the result of the poll? And if someone says, in which questions do you want to raise? And if the main result is that the people say, no, we don't want to, does that lead then to the decision of your local government? And these are all relevant questions which should be raised in advance, and which have an impact on the concrete choice of which instrument or which engagement tool or which engagement strategy in a process perspective is chosen. And of course, also what should not be neglected is which resources are available in a sense of which time resources, which person and money for a participation or engagement process. So the planning of engagement is a central central issue. And another point is, in this planning stage, you should be really spending some effort on which is the system you want to be engaged, and to analyze the preconditions, because the regions differ, stakeholder groups differ, and you need more information on those different context and contextual factors in order to choose the appropriate engagement tool. You see here a couple of different points. I think they are all relevant while working with communities, and really to shape the right engagement tool to the community, to the respective needs and goals, and to the preconditions, that we have a match between the engagement process and the municipality or the system you want to get engaged. And of course, we have different methods. We can do stakeholder mapping, media analysis, and of course stakeholder interviews and surveys to get the information we need. Paul already mentioned this. Just again here to reflect that participation, it's not or shouldn't be done just to do participation, but it's connected to the different justice levels or dimensions: procedural, distributional, interpersonal justice. It's good participation is linked to trust in different institutions, but also in the procedure. And as I already mentioned before, it's not about one size fits all, but we need the communication and engagement strategies based on or fitting to the respective needs and perspective and the preconditions we found in the system we want to get involved. And especially for hydrogen, we currently see that there are some uncertainties about quantities, when at which point in time is how much available. And this is what we do, or this is what we have also to be transparent about, and which should be communicated in such an engagement process in order to give the people the possibility to get an informed or to make an informed decision. Yeah, my second question, again, for the poll, I would like to hear or to see your experiences about which stakeholder groups. The first one was about the sectors, and now here, which stakeholder groups should be mainly addressed when we talk about engagement activities and engagement strategies. And yeah, I'm happy if you put in your if you do put in your vote. I think here, okay, I see it's a competition. Maybe I'll go on talking while you are polling. I think, of course, we are living in a multi-level society, and we have the political level with the maybe providing the regulatory framework. We have the media, which is important for a nationwide discourse about the energy goals, for example. And I think all those levels are highly interconnected, and we should be aware that it's, again, not only maybe the political or not only the economical level. I think they are really important, but that we have a transparent interconnection of information and of ideal and networking and working together of the different levels, that they are not stay disconnected. Okay, thank you. I end the poll here and come to my conclusion. I just wanted to show or to share some questions, some thoughts with you, that of course we see hydrogen is an important pathway for energy transition. Somehow in the public discourse, on a public perception, it seems a bit like a silver bullet for energy transition. And I think here we need the discourse about potentials, but also limitations to have, let's say, a fair engagement for possibilities. I think stakeholder engagement is one, beside others, one relevant factor for making this transition socially acceptable. And of course, by getting all the different stakeholders involved in a way of sustainable, so that it's really endures for the next decades. I wanted to show, I tried to show at least and give you some insights that the planning phase is as relevant as the choice of a concrete engagement tool. And of course, we should be aware that engagement in a comprehensive way or in a broad perspective is not only about one single project, but should be thought and planned as a long-term process, and the goal should be a structural empowerment for energy transition. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention.
Jan, thank you very much indeed. There's a few points we're going to raise here with you from the audience, and we'll pick them up, Jan, if you can stay on camera just for a couple of minutes, please. We have a comment in from John O'Sullivan. John says, when we talk about engagement, John says, we need details and the ability to demonstrate employment numbers and economic benefits at each stage in the hydrogen supply chain to their hosting communities and regions. Your thoughts on that, please, Jan?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's... Can
you come back on camera, please, as well? Please, you're off camera.
Sorry, it says currently that my connection seems too low.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm come back when it's possible. But yeah, I agree. We know those data, and we need, of course, also the demonstration of what is feasible, what is possible, which are the benefits exactly at each stage. So it's a differentiated perception is possible, and then that people can make their, as I said, like an consent or an informed decision or an informed attitude formation process. So yeah.
Thanks. Kieran McLaughlin from TK Renewables, Jan says, effective engagement helps translate stakeholder needs into organizational goals and creates the basis for an effective strategy in hydrogen development. So how do we achieve that effective engagement, in your thoughts, please?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with the statement again, and then I think it depends again. It depends really from when talking about organization, for example, about some of the detailed characteristics of the organization. So what are the goals so far? Which preconditions do we have? And then we could shape, or we can choose which is the fitting or the matching engagement tool for example, for this organization. But in principle, I completely agree. If we are successful in creating effective engagement, this helps a lot also in translating such issues.
One final point before we move on, and it's a good point from Stephen Chiara, and we hope to cover this further, Stephen, in the main Q&A at the end, but it's a good time to raise it. Stephen says, this seems like a critical few years for political engagement, which you covered in your last poll, Jan, as some big decisions about future decarbonisation options will be decided in that period. How critical is that those political engagement and political decisions, the catalyst for engagement?
Yeah, again, I completely agree, and I think it's important, and it's a good argument for a broad decision and to integrate broad perspectives of society, not only one level, let's say, or one political party or special industry view, because we should avoid lock-in effects, we should avoid stranded investments, and therefore we need this, at least from my point of view, we need a critical and diverse public discourse, because we will then, with the decision that will be done in the next years, this have an impact for the next decades. Sorry, and so exactly we have this long-term impact of decisions being made in the next years, and therefore we need the broad, not only the broad perspective in the sense of doing the right decisions, but also in the sense of legitimacy. That it's really on a broad based and on a broad public involvement. to come to those decisions.
Jan, thank you very much indeed.